This is the Patriotic Pulpit. I am Bill Lockwood. I wanted today to offer some thoughts about the debate. It's been probably about a week now since the debate has occurred, and I wanted to mull over some of the thoughts on it and express some of them. I know that others have had great thoughts about it. Tucker Carlson, of course, I'd rather read his thoughts or hear his thoughts than even my own. I mean, what a great commentator, a great incisive thinker, and just a logical constitutionalist. And others also have had great thoughts on the debate, but I wanted to offer some things that I think maybe has not been touched upon. But I wanted to let it soak in a little bit as far as what my thoughts were going to be and how I wanted to arrange it. And also, I might note that the news today, of course, is the second assassination attempt. That is, I guess it occurred actually yesterday. And I know the mainstream media, inclusive of Fox News, they've covered it so well. And we're just in a terrible, terrible place in our nation, but I want to set that all aside and just talk about, for a moment, the debate, some thoughts on it, and to give you some perspective, at least my perspective on it, hopefully that it's helpful. And so I have several things to mention regarding it. Number one is that the debate with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris that occurred about a week ago, I thought it was so ironic that it occurred in Philadelphia Constitution Hall, and yet there was not one mention of the Constitution in the debate itself. I don't recall, I watched it carefully, I took some notes. I don't recall any statement made regarding the Constitution at all regarding involving in the debate. No mention of it, both sides, and that would be not only Kamala Harris, but also Donald Trump. So I wanted to reflect for a moment, just thinking about the Constitution. The genius of the Constitution is that our founding fathers recognized that we all have natural rights, which means rights that are given to us by God. That is, of course, the Declaration of Independence. And peoples have always lost those rights because of too much government. So our founding fathers, instead of crafting a government that might take away our rights, they wanted to craft a weak government. Hence the Articles of Confederation, which was, of course, the government under which we operated during the War for Independence. But it was on the spectrum of things. It was a very weak government. And the reason they did that was because all of history shows that people lose their rights. The rights are trampled, not by foreign nations necessarily, but by their own government. And therefore, the government that they crafted, that they created, genius really, because it's the longest lasting constitution that the world has ever seen, over 200 years. If we could say accurately that it is actually being abided by, it is actually being honored today. I don't know that that's the case. But the genius of the Constitution is the fact that the Constitution only is the idea that we give some of our rights to the government, not give our rights to the government, but rather give the protection of these rights to our government. That is, we have bequeathed to the government for safekeeping, some of our abilities, such as taxing and spending, regulating commerce within the states, establishing rules for citizenship, coining money, patent laws, declaring war. And here's one important one that we'll talk about as we think about the debate, and that is protecting our own borders. All of these things are bequeathed by the right of the people to the government that they might do these things. But the important thing is that the 10th Amendment, by the way, the Bill of Rights, inclusive of the 10th Amendment, was simply a statement to say, oh, by the way, we gave to the government these rights, which enumerated about 20 of them in the Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and that's all. And by the way, the 10th Amendment is a, by the way, statement to say no more. Anything other than that is left to the states and to the people respectively. Why did they do that? They did that because, as we mentioned, that people lose their rights by government, too much government. So the Constitution is so important in that regard. So the Bill of Rights is an oh, by the way statement. Just to be clear, the people said the federal government will never have a say-so. Never have a say-so in speech. It will never have a say-so in religion. It will never have a say-so in guns, the right of the people to protect themselves with firearms. Second Amendment, of course. The quartering of troops will never be something that the federal government will float. Unreasonable searches and seizures, Fourth Amendment, absolutely not. And on and down the line. And the protection of personal effects, the Fourth Amendment, coming down to the 10th Amendment. And they said, by the way, here's another one. Anything that is not listed here, this is the 9th Amendment actually, that is forbidden from the federal government also. And anything, 10th Amendment, anything outside of these is forbidden from the federal government. They just put a lock and key. I'm using Thomas Jefferson's wording here. When we get to the 10th Amendment, lock and key on it. The lock and key of the Constitution is the 10th Amendment. The federal government is forbidden from participating in any other area than those enumerated in Article 1, Section 8. Now, the point of all of this is that Democrats are all about erasing the Constitution. Just take, for example, the border. It's not simply that they're allowing illegals into the country. They're actually orchestrating foreign nationals to come in here to undermine our country, to create disaster in the cities, as well as taint the election process that Democrats are signing them up right now. The border was given to the federal government. That's one of the great protective barriers that we have. For example, the same reason. The George Soroses of the world, the Barack Obamas, who's in George Soros's pocket, buys DAs to refuse to punish criminals. Why do they do that? Because according to the Antonio Gramsci communist method, and that is pressure from above, pressure from below. What they want is, that is the Democratic Party, Marxists, what they want is chaos on the streets. They want chaos at the university level. They want chaos in the communities. And then they want to bring pressure from above, that is from government officials. So you have the pincer strategy, the government above, the chaos below, creating this pincer strategy that is destroying America. That's what the Democratic Party is all about. That's why they want open borders. So what's interesting here, at the same time, the federal government is disallowed from doing, that is without authority to do such things as provide education. But where's that gone? We have a Department of Education. They are forbidden from overseeing the environment, but we have a federal government overseeing that. And that is the Department of Energy. Then we have the federal government is forbidden from overseeing health care. But what do we have? We have Kamala Harris wanting government health care, redistribution of wealth. All of that is forbidden in the Constitution. That's one reason we didn't hear the Constitution mentioned by Kamala Harris and unfortunately by Donald Trump either. Neither candidate brought up the Constitution. How effective would it have been if Donald Trump had simply got up and said, the Constitution disallows this. What you're proposing is disallowed by the Constitution. That is, one of the things she floated was, we want to have everybody coming into a home and we're going to help new home buyers with $25,000 down payment. Constitutionally, morally, it is illegal. And morally, it is unjust. Why? Because it means Kamala Harris is not going to kick in her own money. She's going to kick in your money. So all of that is what I think was so missing in the debate. That is, I would just like to have had a candidate to stand up and say, wouldn't it have been so great if Donald Trump had stood up and said, like James Madison, I cannot lay my finger on a single provision in the Constitution that allows the government to take money from this segment of society and put it into this segment. But he didn't do that, and partially because the Republican Party kind of being dragged along slowly with unconstitutional socialistic ideas. But I tell you what, we are simply upside down, constitutionally speaking. And so what the federal government is tasked to do, border control, border security, Democrats refuse to do. As a matter of fact, they actually open up the borders. And so They're turning the Constitution upside down. And what the federal government is forbidden to do, removing guns, printing money, regulating our health care, regulating our free speech, that's what the Democrat Party is all about doing. So they've turned the Constitution, the country, upside down. And what the federal government is tasked to do, protecting our borders, for illustration, the Democrat Party is all about erasing our borders. And what the federal government is forbidden by the 10th Amendment to do, health care, removing guns, etc., the Democrat Party is all about getting involved in it. Censorship, for example. Censorship. This is the opposite of free speech, but Kamala Harris has a censorship agenda. The Democrats have provided Facebook, for example, they've provided at the congressional level protection for Facebook and the owners of Facebook from lawsuits. Well, why do they do that? Because now when they provide that protection, they now think that they can come in, as they have done, and say, here's what we're going to regulate, what appears on Facebook, what appears on Twitter, what appears on social media. We're going to regulate that. Free speech is being killed in America by the Democratic Party. That shows us how much they've turned the government upside down. So those are some of my first thoughts regarding the debate. So we'll take a break. We'll come right back. We'll talk about the bias of the ABC moderators, Lindsay Davis, particularly, in just a moment. Good food is just minutes away at Rafter J Barbecue in Iowa Park, Texas. Jim and Jeremiah Stevens and their staff are ready to serve you great food and a great atmosphere. Ribs, pulled pork, Cajun cooking too, oh boy, gumbo, and of course, hand-cut fries. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Sunday, 11 to 8. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 11 to 9. Closed on Monday. Family-owned Rafter J Barbecue, 507 Access Road in Iowa Park, Texas. My second thought regarding the debate involves the absolute abject bias that ABC moderators showed in the debate. Lindsay Davis and David Muir. What a sad, sad situation. Lindsay Davis, for example, and this comes to us from the Times of India, just a news clip that came out within the last few days. She admits to fact-checking Donald Trump on several occasions, but she did not fact-check Harris one single time. And she confesses, and here's the point, that it is due to the fact that in the last debate, Joe Biden dropped out because of the debate, and so she was miffed by it, and she instead wanted to fact-check Donald Trump, and so she interrupted him, tried to correct him, and said, we're fact-checking this, and so forth. So biased. David Muir, the same bias. But Lindsay Davis particularly, here's something else interesting. Davis was a sorority sister to Kamala Harris. Now, I didn't find this out till just a few days ago, reading the news. And so here's Yahoo News, which of course itself is very biased, and tells us, yes, this claim is technically true. Kamala Harris, sorority sister with Lindsay Davis. Now, Kamala Harris graduated from, I think it was Howard University, 1986 or so, and she was a part of a sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. So also, Davis was the same member of the same sorority, even though a different college, but it's a college-wide, collegiate-wide sorority that they're both sisters in, and they have national conferences. And so Lindsay Davis attends the same sorority gatherings that are held in either Washington, D.C. or elsewhere, where Kamala Harris actually speaks. And so they have this camaraderie. They're part of the same sorority. Absolutely biased. And so that is just one area. Not only so, but Lindsay Davis obviously is a socialist. So is David Muir. The ABC News, absolutely biased. They never fact-checked Harris one single time. And she told one lie after another. And these lies have already been debunked. These lies they've already been shown to be falsehoods. For example, Project 2025. Donald Trump has had nothing to do with that Project 2025. Number two, how about removing guns? Donald Trump brought up that she wanted to remove the firearms, that is, remove our Second Amendment rights. That is, of course, the Democratic Party's not about the Constitution. The Democratic Party, or I should say the government, is forbidden from participating in anything having to do with guns, period. But she wants to take away guns. Now, that's on videotape. It's out there. It's very simple to see. Anybody can check it. And she says, well, no, she's not about that. You know what? Why didn't they fact check her and say, you know what? Lindsay Davis, perfect opportunity to tell her sorority sister, no, you have been on tape removing guns. That's what you want to do, remove guns. How about Charlottesville? The Charlottesville lie was told by Joe Biden. It was pushed by the mainstream media. And it was also pushed once again by Kamala Harris. What are they trying to do? They're throwing out these red herrings. They're throwing out these flame-throwing things in order to get people excited against Donald Trump. And how about fracking? She has been on record of time and again, anybody can look it up, that she's opposed to fracking. Well, that was held in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Everybody in the country watching it. And yet she says, well, she's not about banning fracking. Yes, she is about it. Here's another question for Kamala Harris. When she made those statements, which she now denies she made, you can't tell whether snake going south is coming back or going south or coming back, whatever. You know, I think the ditty is actually, you can't tell whether the snake that made the track is going south or coming back. That's what it is. You can't tell what these snakes are about. That's what Kamala Harris is. She has been about banning fracking. She's been about removing guns. But here's a question. Where's the constitutional authority that she has for banning fracking, for banning offshore drilling, for banning any of these things? The Constitution disallows it. But once again, the Constitution was actually a forbidden topic in Constitution Hall. I thought that is absolutely, to me, stunning. But here's perhaps a larger point, and that is it shows us in all of these things the power of the media. Now think about the power of the media for a moment. Vice presidential candidate pick J.D. Vance for Donald Trump used to be an anti-Trumper. Now the mainstream media wants to make big hay, a lot of hay out of that, but he used to be an anti-Trumper. He was against Donald Trump. But why was that the case? That was the case because his opinions were formed by the media. But when he started himself digging, examining, making research himself, doing his own research, he discovered that he had been fed a whole truckload of misinformation, propaganda, and lies about Donald Trump. Unfortunately, there are not many people, not many Americans who are willing to do a little bit of research, read both sides. Instead, they are being force-fed, spoon-fed by the mainstream media, ABC, NBC, Yahoo News, and these different places, New York Times, Washington Post. They're being spoon-fed what to believe. These organs of news, that is, these news media outlets, have been pro-communist for so long as I have been alive. It is the New York Times, for example, that boasted about the great things that Fidel Castro, who was simply an agrarian reformer, was going to do in Cuba, knowing all the while the facts were out there that he was a communist and he was a dictator and he wanted a dictatorship. But the New York Times, this is back in the early 1960s. They denied it. They said he's simply an agrarian reformer. They said the same thing about Mao Tse-tung. He's an agrarian reformer. And the bad guy there, they said, was Chiang Kai-shek. No, that was the opposite was true. But this points to the fact that the mainstream media has been lying about communism, Marxism for a long time, and the side that they are on is Kamala Harris. What does that say? It says that she is a Marxist, just as her father was a Marxist professor. And by the way, Donald Trump brought that up. But the larger point I want us to see here is that very few people are going to be like J.D. Vance and just be honest, do his own research, have integrity, and say, you know what? I've been lied to about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a man who wants to go back to a smaller government. He wants to go back to a more constitutional form of government, and so he supported Donald Trump. But that shows us the power of the media. The power of the media, the powers that be. She is being groomed by the media. And it shows us how dangerous, what dangerous waters we are in this country. Let's talk for a few moments about Kamala Harris. Some of the things about my take on the debate. Number one, I think she did better this time. I think she was poised. But she did do this. She bragged about being the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act. They have no shame. They have no shame whatsoever. She doesn't even know what inflation is. Inflation is the printing of more money, which the Inflation Reduction Act did. So it was actually the Inflation Increase Act. That's what it was all about. Not reducing, the Inflation Increasing Act. And she voted for it. And she bragged about it. I suppose her ignorance about what is inflation, she depended upon the Democrat people to not have an understanding about what inflation is also, and she just bragged about it. How about abortion? I thought, what a horrific portion of the debate. She was never nailed down. Donald Trump tried to nail her down, but the moderators, so biased, they didn't want to nail her down. They were not interested about what month she might ban abortion. She was not. The Democratic Party has been about aborting children up to 9 months, and even the governor of West Virginia, the former governor, said the same thing, decide after the baby's born. That is absolutely horrendous. The Democrats don't want to face the music. The point is that life begins at conception, and until we get our minds centered on real critical thinking and understanding what life is, then we're going to be lost with the Democrats on this one. How about health care? Health care, the Democrats have been lying about this since the days of FDR. Is health care a right? Absolutely not. I will stand toe-to-toe with anyone and argue, how can it be a right? Health care. The care that someone provides is not a right. It is a service. That's why people go to college in order to get medical degrees, because it is a service that they pay that they might be able to provide that health care for someone. It is a service. It is not a right. To say that it is a right is to say that I have a right to your expertise. I have right now people that come to the house and work for me building something. Do I have a right to their expertise? If I have a right to their expertise, they cannot charge me anything for it. The truth is, I don't have a right to their expertise. These people who are builders have expertise. They've gone to school, they've learned about it, they have many years of experience. Do I have a right to their expertise to build something for me? If I have a right, then they have no right to charge me for it. Same thing with healthcare. You can see it regarding building. Of course, I don't have a right to their expertise. I have a right to contract with them and to pay them, but I don't have a right. I have a right for their service in the sense that I have a right to contract for the service, but I don't have a right to their building for me. The same thing regarding healthcare. The Democrats have just messed this up so entirely. Everybody has a right to healthcare. No, everybody doesn't have a right to the expertise that other people provide for me. If I say I have a right to their expertise, that means I have a right to their providing for me healthcare, their life's experiences, their abilities, their bought and paid for degrees, that I have a right without paying for it, them providing for me. And that's exactly what the Democrats want you to think, that you have a right to health care, that is someone providing for you. And by the way, if that's be the case, who is going to pay for it? Well, if you have a right to health care, then that means that government is going to have to step in and force me to pay for your health care. That is not freedom. But it was FDR who twisted this around. I went to Washington, D.C. one time, and on the tour there, I saw a memorial to FDR. Completely different characteristics, completely different ideas than we have from the Jefferson Memorial, for example, who, of course, stood for liberty. FDR said, we want to have freedom to speak, and then we have freedom from want. He wanted us to be free from want. That is, free from lack of food, free from lack of health care. That is not freedom. That is government forcing other people to provide for you. You see how they twist the word freedom? Do I have freedom to move about in this country? Yes, I do. But do I have freedom for transportation? Does FDR, does he want me to be free from lack of transportation? Do the Democrats want me free from lack of transportation? That means, if so, that means that you are going to be forced to purchase for me my ticket or my car or whatever it may be, however I transport myself around this country. The government's going to force the Democrats to pay for my transportation, make you pay for it. It's the same thing regarding health care. Karl Marx is the one who said, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. But the question is, someone must decide who's in need and who has the ability. And who makes that decision? Big government. So if we compare my need to those who are the George Soroses of the world, then we will see that I am very, very poor. I'm a pauper. But if we compare me to people in Central America or Nicaragua, then I'm going to be someone who's very wealthy and I'm going to have ability to pay for them. So who's going to make the decisions here? We're actually turning over to government health care. That is absolutely unconscionable, not only constitutionally, but morally speaking. Now let me say a few words about Trump. And that I think sums up the ideas regarding health care and Kamala Harris, the Marxist. But let's think about Donald Trump for a moment. I do want to make a couple of reflections on Trump at the debate. Number one, I think he was really milquetoast. I think he was flat. I don't know whether his handlers told him not to beat up a woman, not to make sarcastic remarks as he has in the past to Hillary Clinton and other people. But I wish he could have been lighter. I wish he'd come back with some of his famous barbs. Now he had a couple of missed opportunities. Now he took a couple of opportunities. We'll talk about that in a moment. But one of them, I think he just missed a great big opening at the first. The first question is, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? The answer is obviously no. But what did Kamala Harris give as her answer? She started talking about being brought up in a middle-class family and how her mother was working and Martha worked hard, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. Didn't answer the question, doesn't touch the issue of, are we better off today than we were 4 years ago? The answer is obviously no. We pay twice as much for gasoline. My wife comes home and says, you know what? Our money, $100 at the grocery store, goes only half as far. Everything is more than double in price. We are hurting. Everyone out here is hurting. The answer is no, we are not. And all she says is we're going to force some people to pay for other people to have a down payment for a home. I don't get that. I don't get that luxury. I still have mortgages to pay. And all of this, everything is going out the roof. Prices because of the Inflation Reduction Act. No, that's the Inflation Increase Act is what it is. But Donald Trump missed that opportunity. I thought he should have capitalized on that, said, you know what? She did not answer the question. No one is better off in this country than they were 4 years ago. Go to the gas station, go to the grocery store, go to Walmart, go anywhere. Try to build a building on your property. Try to build. Everything is out of sight. And on the border, I'll tell you, Donald Trump is exactly right on the border. This is the biggest issue that we face. The economy is only a sidebar because the border issue is destroying our economy. The Democratic Party is importing voters. They are indoctrinating students at the university level. They are importing voters from foreign countries, and they are indeed registering them. They want to steal the election. That's exactly what's going to happen here. So the border is the biggest issue. Right now, every day on the news, we have, just right down in Graham, Texas, we have gang problems, Venezuelan gang problems in Sleepy Graham. What is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. The Democrats not simply failed in their job on the border, but they have orchestrated the chaos that we have in our country, and Donald Trump is exactly right. And if for no other reason, I would vote for Donald Trump on this issue alone. How about the Afghan pullout? She is responsible. That was a debacle. And John Kirby may get up and lie about it. Admirals do lie because they're political animals. And here's something I thought was interesting. Donald Trump did have a great comeback. She accused him of being hated by military leaders. Many people hate them or hate him. And he said, the perfect answer, that's because I fire people you do not. That is exactly right. He fires people that are not doing their job. So, one other thing. How about rigged elections? Do we have rigged elections? I do not understand how anyone can avoid the plain, bald fact that is right before us, that the elections have been rigged from the last one to this one. How so? A number of FBI agents that's working under the DOJ and the Attorney General came out, Merrick Garland, the other day came out, we are not political, we're not. No. We had FBI agents signing a statement, knowingly lying in the last election, saying that the laptop of Hunter Biden was actually a Russian disinformation project. It was a knowing lie, and they interfered at the federal level, that is the DOJ, interrupted the election, interfered in the election, rigged the election in favor of Joe Biden. If they can do that, they will do anything, and there are no holds barred with the Democratic Party, the Marxists of America, to rig elections. Donald Trump is exactly right, and we need to vote for Donald Trump.